Hey, I'm Justin, and this is Arms of Telos, and in this video I'm going to go over some of the changes that are coming in 0.19. So in the old build we had these red boxes and these orange bridges, and you can see they have this kind of placeholder grid texture. So I've replaced those. We now have this new building, and it gives you a sense of how tall you are. You're about 3 stories tall in your mech. And then I've also added these energy bridges, and these are pretty cool looking, plus you can also see people above while you're underneath. But there's a lot more changes outside the map. So let's go back to the old build for a second. This is what you're used to seeing. The space rocks are all purple, both sides of the map look identical. The only difference are these colored squares that indicate which side of the map you're on. Blue for friendly side, orange for enemy side. So back into the new build. Immediately you'll notice that the home base area is very blue and friendly looking. And then as you approach the center of the map, you'll notice that the space ore kind of turns yellowish and then orange. The skybox is also greener. And then as you get to the enemy side of the map, you'll see more of these purples and pinks. Inside the asteroid base, it's literally a day and night difference. Back at your base, it's green and sunny, and in here it's kind of like a neon city sort of thing. So one more quick fly through, you'll see the gradient changing from this pink, and then you get to the kind of greenish color, the neutral, in the center area. And then as you approach your friendly base, it'll be this nice welcoming blue. And there's even some kind of like nice glow behind your base. So before I talk about the changes to the magnet surfaces, I need to go over one of the challenges I faced in development. And it has to do with the way that mouse look works in games. So in most games, your mouse look is going to be what's called gimbal locked. And the way that plays out is, if you're looking straight ahead and you move your mouse left to right, you're just going to move left to right. It makes sense. If you look up at an angle, you're actually kind of tracing a circle because you're pivoting around an axis. If you look straight up, you're just going to spin in place, right? And so that, for the most part, that's fine. That's more or less how a human works. And in most games, whatever you're aiming at will generally be in front of you. But where that becomes a problem is if the enemy is right above you. As you can see, you're going to hit the top and you're going to stop, and that axis is what's called gimbal locked. And you can kind of compensate by knowing when to pivot. But I think subconsciously, what tells you when to pivot, or helps tell you, is kind of your environment, right? So these buildings and what's above, either the sky or the ceiling, sometimes the buildings are going to be walls or trees. Those are all communicating to you how high or what kind of angle you're looking up at. And of course, you're doing all this on a subconscious level. You're not actually doing the math here, but it still helps you figure out how you need to move your mouse. But out in zero gravity, you don't have those reference points. There's no ground, there's no sky, there's no buildings or trees. But this isn't really a problem in zero gravity because there's no gimbal lock for the mouse look whenever you're in zero gravity. When you look left and right, you'll always look left and right no matter what angle you're at. And you can't get rid of gimbal lock indoors because if you look up and then look to the right, you would literally just fall over. But whenever you're on these magnet surfaces, your aim is gimbal locked and it's oriented to that surface direction. So yeah, here's the problem. Imagine you're looking up and you have an enemy that landed on that magnet surface to the right, so you want to aim over to it. When you move your mouse to the right, you just kind of spin. And again, that's not a problem when you're indoors and you have these environmental reference points, but out here you're missing those. And so that makes it hard to aim consistently. So what I've done is I've expanded the skybox shader to kind of simulate some of these environmental reference points. So first off, it's darker where the ground would be and it's lighter where the sky would be. I've also added these rings, and they actually line up with where your cursor will go if you move your mouse side to side. So it's almost like graph paper. So if we look up at a similar angle as we did last time, because of all these rings and because of the gradient moving up, it's actually a lot easier to orient yourself, and I think this is still working subconsciously. You don't really have to think about it or do the math, you just kind of know how to move your mouse. So previously that awkwardness with magnet surfaces kind of limited what I could do. I couldn't really place them where I wanted to because it just didn't feel right. So now I've been able to go back and add some more magnet surfaces to the map. I've also increased the movement speed on magnet surfaces, and this should help you out on defense. It'll give you a mobility advantage over people that are kind of floating around in zero gravity because you have more grip. And because you're moving around a lot faster, I didn't want you accidentally dismounting the surface, and so now the edges kind of act like walls and you will not dismount if you do not want to. If you do want to exit the surface, you can just hold down control and you will slide off just like normal. And of course you can still jump off magnet surfaces. But I've made a small change here too. So in the old build, you'll notice as I jump, because I was charging with spacebar, I immediately start thrusting upward and it throws off my trajectory. So now I simply ignore the thrust until you've let go of that key, which means you're going to go exactly where you were pointing. And if for whatever reason you do want to adjust your trajectory like that, all you have to do is let go for a split second and you're good to go. So there's also some big changes to the center area where the first flag stand is. So this is the old build, and you can see the room here is pretty small. This is where the first flag would be, and the problem is the room is so small that an enemy would come in the front door and be out the back door in like a second or two. And you wouldn't have a chance to see them coming or to shoot at them as they approached. As soon as they had the flag, they would be out. In fact, it actually created kind of a loop, and so you could keep doing this, and consequently, the first stage of the match would usually go by pretty quickly, and it didn't really have as much weight to it as I wanted it to. So this is the new build, and you can immediately see that it's a lot more open, and there's this thing in front of us. And this is actually partially inspired by one of our players, Grandy. He suggested putting in a window so that you could see enemies coming and you could prepare to defend against them. But I've actually taken it a step further, so you can shoot through it, and you can also move through it. So you can not only see enemies coming, but yeah, you can already start shooting at them. And so this is meant to give defenders a little bit of an edge. But as you might have guessed, if you go over to the enemy side, you'll notice it looks different, and yeah, it stops you. So you are unable to move through or shoot through the enemy's force field. And so yeah, these work in both directions, and it kind of gives defenders a home court advantage over the attackers. But you shouldn't really be concerned about sticking around to fight them. Your main concern is to get the flag and get out. But you might have noticed the path up the ramp is now cut off, so you'll usually have to go outside. But there's actually more to them. They react to the flag status. So when the enemy's flag is off of their stand, your force fields will be offline. If they return the flag, or you capture it and it goes back to their base, your force fields go back up. So what this means is that, depending on the status of your flag, different flag routes for the enemy flag will open or close. And that also opens up new opportunities to where it might be better for your team if you do not return your flag immediately. And you might have noticed the hallway over here has 2 force fields, which effectively creates a safe room where your defense can set up a heal gem or some other kind of deployable where the enemy will have a tougher time getting to it. So I think this is just one more example where I'm glad I can design the maps and the weapons and everything around one type of game mode, the progressive capture the flag, and I don't have to compromise with making sure everything works with team deathmatch and all these other game modes. And so one more thing I wanted to mention was the preferred playtime setting. And so because our community is small, I built a tool to make it easy to figure out which times work best for everybody. And so you just kind of go through and select which times generally work for you. It's automatically adjusted for your time zone, and then that'll get sent up to the server, and I can figure out which times are the most popular. I've already used this to help figure out what the best time would be for our Saturday event. So we have Skirmish Saturdays, and that's a great opportunity for new players to come, and we'll teach you the basics, and then after that we'll play some rounds. And so that's it for this video. You can see the full list of changes for 0.19 on the forums, and you can subscribe to our mailing list to be notified when the next wave of copies will be available for the soft launch. And as always, let me know what you think. Thanks.